Part 3 of today's show, Shaun, is the CF part of the RTCF show, recruiting, team, college football. And what Shaun and I are going to talk about, and it's a topic that Trevor got to talk with Bill Bender about, but Shaun and I felt a little jealous that we weren't on the show talking about the best quarterbacks in the country. So Bill and Trevor did a great job giving their takes on that. And so Shaun and I are going to give ours. And so what's fascinating about this, Shaun, is you can't, it used to be where, hey, who are the top 10 quarterbacks in college football? And we'd have that debate. It's so much different now because of the transfer portal. And the transfer portal has made it to where you almost got to like do sections of what type of quarterback are we talking about because of so much of the uncertainty. So what Shaun and I have done is we've put together our lists of the best quarterbacks in college football. And we're doing our top 5. So we're going to each break down our own top 5s. And we're going to start off with just the top 5 returning quarterbacks in college football. So just guys that started last year that are starting again at the school they started at last year. We've got to put that caveat in there because of the transfer portal. Shaun will go first, and I'll give my 5. And then part 2 of this segment is going to be who are the top 5 transfer quarterbacks. And we'll add some context. We're just going to list 5 and like, peace out, everybody. We're going to talk about them. And then part 3 of this segment is going to be who are the top first-year starters, whether it's a transfer who's a first-year starter, a returning player going to his first-year starter, or, in Shaun's case, there's a true freshman on there. So who are the guys that are stepping into new starting roles? They could have started a game in place of an injury from time to time. That doesn't count to me. We're talking about guys that go into a season as the guy for the second time. We're going to have that conversation as well. So, Shaun, the first segment is about returning starting quarterbacks, and then we'll go to transfers. And I'm going to give a big picture view. Part of the reason that I hope Notre Dame goes into this season thinking we have a shot to win a title again is because the one thing I've noticed is I don't believe this is a great year quarterback amongst the veterans. I think a lot of the best quarterbacks in college football this year are going to be young, just like Notre Dame will. And that somewhat changes the landscape to where a team like a Notre Dame, a team like an Ohio State, like an Oregon, like a Texas, teams that do have first-time starters, talented but first-time starters, are going to be okay because there's not a lot of great veteran quarterbacks, again. And so I think that's a fascinating thing to talk about, Shaun. And I was underwhelmed by my list because there isn't that no-brainer that's the best returning quarterback in college football, or this is the top 2 or 3. You and I have very different top 5 lists. And in the past, if I'd had a top 5 list, one of us would have been like, bro, you're out of your mind not having this guy in the top 5 or that. Now it's like, yeah, okay, we have very different top 5s, but all right. So the conversation is going to be interesting, and we purposely didn't talk a lot about it. We just went over what our lists were, and we'll have some of that fun kind of back and forth about it now. So, Shaun, we're going to start with you. And we're going to list, we're going to go top 5. Shaun cheated a little bit because he couldn't decide who his top 5 was. There was a tie for 5. But we're going to have some fun here, Shaun, and we're going to list our top 5 returning starting quarterbacks, guys who started for their teams a year ago. We're going to go 5-1. Mr. Davis, as my beloved guest, you get to kick things off here.
I'm sorry. Man, I keep hitting it. My button keeps clicking on and off. That's why I was trying to wait to see that I would make sure I was clear. All right, let's go.
That happened to me last week, by the way. It was weird.
Okay.
So it's not.
Yeah, it kept clicking. So let's start. I had a tie. I did cheat, B. So I want to give, a disclaimer before I get started. This is mine. This is me. It's not about being right, wrong. This is me. These are the 5 guys that I've grown to have an appreciation for. And I could be honest, B, some of these guys I didn't like at all, say a year ago or even a year and a half ago. But for some reason, I've gained a little bit of respect. And I'm looking forward to watching to see if they can take the next step as a returning starter this year in college football. So I'm going to start with My tie. I had a tie at the fifth spot, and I just decided I'm not leaving either one of these kids off. Dylan Raiola out of Nebraska came in with a lot of hype, struggled early on, but actually started off pretty good, then hit a road bump, as most freshmen do at some point. And by the end of the season, you look at him statistically and his efficiency and his high completion percentage the last 3 games of the season. That team was trending well offensively. Didn't have a ton around him. I'm looking forward to watching Carter Nelson, who is a former Notre Dame targeted tight end, to see how he develops and how he adds to the offense and becomes a security blanket for Dylan Raiola. Their offense is going to be very pro style. So play action, his ability to run, move in the pocket, make plays off schedule, throw from different angles. I think he's going to be a much improved quarterback, and I definitely think he's going to be one of the top quarterbacks to watch in college football that's returning. My next quarterback, Ty, look, before the playoff game against the Ohio State Buckeyes, I can honestly say I might have been a little bit underwhelmed. But there was something about the fight that this young man showed. He was the only offensive player that decided to fight and not tuck tail and run in the playoffs in the horseshoe. We know the talent, big arm, what he showed. I didn't know he could run like that. I didn't know he had the escapability. It was almost like he tried to be this pocket passer for the majority of the season, which is what Josh Heupel had before him. And then when everything was breaking down, just to compete, when you know a guy is a competitor, like he just hit a switch and was like, yo, I'm about to use my legs to get us some points or to get us some yardage, because everybody else seems like they're scared to go out here and fight. I love that from the youngster. Just like Dylan Raiola, he came to Tennessee with a lot of hype. And by the end of the season, I gained a lot of respect for this kid because of the competitor that I saw out of him. And honestly, that's one of the things that I questioned about the kid. Who was he going to be on the inside? And that young man showed me a lot. He showed me that he was a true competitor. Now, fourth place for me is a young man that I saw drastically improve from the early season loss against BYU, which he was absolutely. You bookmarked that BYU game with the Penn State performance in the playoffs. I understand why some people could look at this and say, what? But let me tell you something. His improvement from that game, and you look at what he did leading into that big, ACC championship game and how he brought that team back to tie Clemson and looked like they were going into overtime, only for Clemson to make that big play and eventually win things. You know, if they win that game in overtime, their playoff experience might be totally different. Who knows? But Kevin Jennings, SMU, he brings a lot of skill position talent back. They have some answers or some questions they need to answer in the trenches on both sides of the ball. But they did very well in the portal. And we'll look and see. Brett Lashley, second year with this kid. We just talked about Mike Denbrock able to have a quarterback in his system for a second year. That's Kevin Jennings coming back for SMU with a lot of talent at the skill position. So I'm looking forward to seeing what this young man can do. Next, number 3. Bam, bring it up. Drew Allen. Let me tell you something. You talk about somebody that I have constantly thrown shots at for the last 2 seasons in college football. I could throw a shot for the decision and the interception he threw that ultimately gave the game to Notre Dame away in the Orange Bowl, but I'm not going to do that. We're talking about a young man that got a little bit of audacity, and I think Penn State benefited from it. Of course, they had an all-world tight end in Tyler Warren that opened up the passing game. You know, the offensive line that comes back pretty much intact, along with those 2 NFL running backs that they have. He was able to put the ball in harm's way. Sometimes you have to take those chances. Even though he had 6 more interceptions than he had the previous season, he was more effective and had a quarterback rating that was higher, because that's the evolution of a quarterback. Of course, you want your quarterback to protect the ball, but sometimes to get those big plays, you have to take chances, and sometimes it doesn't go well for you. I think he had 20, same amount, just about the same amount of touchdowns, a little bit more interceptions because he was willing to throw the ball down the field more last year, which probably led to that interception at the end of the Notre Dame game. They felt confident in what he had shown in other games. A game like USC, where they had to go blow for blow in the passing game. And he was able to do that and lead them to a big-time victory on the road. That lends me to believing that the young man can take a step forward. He's shown that he can be a winner. Now can he show he can win the big one against the big-time opponents? That's really the only. So I'm waiting. When Oregon comes a calling, Drew Aller, show me that you've taken that next step. That's what I'm looking for. And then show me you can get a big-time win in the playoffs. But that's on his head coach as well,
Yeah.
B. James Franklin has to prove some
Let me
things.
give you one statistic to point out what you talked about, Shaun. Yes, he threw more picks, but to back up your point, he went from 6.8 yards per attempt in 2023 to 8.4 yards per attempt in 2025 or 24. Excuse me, just to back that up.
And so once again, I see people and talking. I didn't say my list is not about who's better, so there's no need to argue about that. My list is about the top 5 guys that are coming back that means something to my eyes and what I want to watch.
Basically, who you would want at your quarterback.
Absolutely. These are the guys that I'm interested in. Number 2.
He real quick, he is the most polarizing returning quarterback in college football. Drew Aller.
You think so?
Yeah, because
if he had beaten Notre Dame,
chat. Look at the chat. It's people who think he sucks. He's Bo Nix. Right. He is what we debated about with Bo Nix in 22 and 23. That's what I mean is you have this wide variety of people who really like him, people who really don't like him. There's some people in the middle, and I actually think you and I are both sort of in the middle, but we, leaning towards he's going in the right direction. Yeah, but he's one of those guys that just brings a lot of animosity. I agree. I'm just simply pointing out that he is this year's, to me, most polarizing figure in that maybe polarizing the right word, but it's more so of where you're going to see the biggest difference of opinion and everybody seems to have a Drew Aller opinion like Bo Nix did. That's the other part.
You're right. Do you think that moment in the Orange Bowl was the opportunity for him to change a lot of minds?
It was. Okay. If he leads them down, or even if they just go to overtime and he wins that game. Yeah. But he struggled in that game overall. Drew didn't play very well in that game.
No.
And that's part of that raising. That's part of kicking that door down is proving that you can play well in those games. And I didn't think he did that in that moment, which is why he's not maybe a little higher on your list.
Number 2 on my board, Cade Klubnik, man. Let me tell you something. Whether it's the Texas game, whether it's the game against SMU in the ACC championship, they got banged up they come in, Louisville bangs them up. And all of a sudden you're saying to yourself, here comes the Clemson slide that has happened the last 2 out of 3 seasons. And this kid, along with his young wide receiving core, just found a way to answer the bell, win another ACC championship, and rise up after getting down early on the road against Texas in a hostile environment. He put that team on his back in the second half because they didn't have a run game. Maffa was injured. It was all Cade Klubnik that made that game any type of game in the fourth quarter at Texas. You have to tip your cap because we saw the year before against Miami on the road, against other teams in fourth quarter situations, he failed miserably. Made horrible decisions, changed that narrative, in my opinion, last year. Showed me a lot. Showed me he has a lot of intestinal fortitude. Tough kid. The big run to end the game against Pittsburgh that was unexpected when they were trying to go down and get a field goal. This kid had those moments. I tipped my cap because, like you said, just a year ago, I was like, I don't know about this kid. He might end up being, a bust during his time at Clemson, and this kid once again answered the bell. This is why I love college football, because you get to watch kids struggle, get better, and ultimately overcome. That's what I love about college football. And while I tell people be relaxed when it comes to development of these youngsters, give them time to grow, and eventually who they are is going to come to the forefront. Sometimes we try to label who they are, like a Drew Aller. He got labeled as this great quarterback with all the hype, and just allow him to be who he is and develop.
Yeah.
And if it's good enough to win for Penn State, so be it. If Cade Klubnik can lead them to another ACC championship and become a true national title contender, or get Clemson back to that level, all of the other talk the previous 3 seasons doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything. So Cade Klubnik is 2 for me. He's 2 for me. And number 1 on my list, because I just refuse to have Cade Klubnik at number 1. Number 1 for me, let me tell you something. He is operating in the spirit that might be floating around Tempe. And that is the spirit of Jake the Snake. Because this kid, Sam Levitt, oh man, the audacity that this young man has, the talk that he talked before the Texas game. He was talking that talk, B. He was talking that talk. And I was a little worried about him, like, man, you're not even going to have your best wide receiver. You're talking all this talk like I'm going to be the best quarterback on the field. He believed that going into that game. And
but he wasn't.
What? He wasn't, but he came darn close. It wasn't like he was short on effort. This kid, man, let me tell you something. I love quarterbacks like this because he's not the most gifted. He doesn't have the biggest arm, B. But find me somebody on this list that has a bigger heart. And his heart is tremendous. And this is one thing I say, which I can say about Cade Klubnik as well. I've yet to see 2 through 5. Chat, Bryan, jump in. 1 and 2 on this list showed me that they can elevate their team in a moment, in a big moment. They gave me evidence of that last year. I didn't see that particularly from Drew Aller in a big moment. I saw Kevin Jennings kind of wilt in the moment. Nico tried. He gave the effort, but he didn't elevate. His team didn't come with him. And Dylan Raiola, that's something that we have to see. But Sam Levitt, for me, proved a lot. Just like against the same team, Cade Klubnik proved a lot against Texas. Sam Levitt, to me, proved a lot against Texas. Once again, this is not about Sam Levitt is the best returner. No, these are the guys, for me, that gained a ton of respect from me, the way they played, and I'm looking forward to them being able to take that next step as they return back to their prospective teams. I think they're going to have some fabulous seasons, but I think they're going to have fabulous seasons for who they are as quarterbacks and who they developed into. That's just what I think. There's no way I would say Drew Aller is a better pro prospect than Nico Amaliva or either Dylan Raiola. But you know what? I got a lot of respect for this kid, man. Got a lot of respect. Hopefully they give him some receivers this year, Bryan. Hopefully he gets some receivers. Hopefully they give him some receivers.
He had a 1,000-yard receiver last year. Now he didn't play in the playoffs, but Jordan Tyson's legit.
He didn't play in the play.
Right.
No, I was talking about Drew Aller. I was talking about Drew Aller.
Yeah.
Hopefully they get Drew Aller some receivers. Oh, Sam Levitt is the type of kid. He didn't have Jordan Tyson, and it didn't matter to him. He felt very confident that he was going to go out, make plays, and make things happen against Texas. So
he had 4.8.
Those are the 5 guys I'm rocking with.
We're going. It's going to be an interesting conversation, Shaun, because my list is a lot different, and I'm very curious what people are going to think about mine versus yours. I did have one thing I want you to think about, Shaun, while I'm going through mine, because I want to talk about this before we move on. Because one of the challenges I had with my top 5 is I didn't project a ton on this list, meaning like there's some guys in this list that like, dude, there's no way I can put that kind of list because you got to show me something. And that's different than like DJ and Dylan because they did have certain numbers. And we're going to talk about that. DJ Lagway is the guy that's not going to be on my list. That is what I want you to think about is who are the 2 guys you had the toughest time not putting on and who's the potential breakout that doesn't deserve to be on there now because of the results, but could be on this list at the end of the season because of the talent. So
you want those now?
No. When I'm done with
Okay.
mine, that'll be the thing
Okay.
that we'll wrap up with. So that way you can kind of think about it while I'm giving my list, and then we'll be able to go through that there, Shaun. So here's my list, and I went with guys that I think it's a combination of proven. There's some projection into year, this next season. There has to be some level of projection. Guys that I think are the players that have the best chance of giving me a combination of production plus proven ability. I give zero whats about NFL draft. This has nothing to do with the NFL draft. This is about this isn't even just about who I think the best winners are, because that's more of a team related thing. These are just the 5 returning veteran quarterbacks that I think are the best at their position, in my opinion, that I would want running my team if they were, like if I was running an offense that fit their skill set. So my number 5 guy is a guy that I think has a chance to move up the list quite a bit if he can fix some stuff, and that's Garrett Nussmeier at LSU. Now, I got some major issues with Garrett Nussmeier. He's very inconsistent. He turns the ball over way too much. He folded in some big minutes last year. But I also saw him step up and make some big-time throws at times last year. For as bad as he played, in my opinion, in the Texas A&M game last season, which was second half, he was abysmal in the second half of that game, and just threw some picks that you're like, bro, I don't even know what to say to you right now. Like, I don't even know what to tell you right now. Some of the throws he made in the fourth quarter against Ole Miss were just unbelievable throws. He made some throws against South Carolina to outduel Lenore Sellers that I thought were very impressive. He made some big-time throws in the win over Vanderbilt and the win over Baylor in the bowl game where you're like, the arm talent's very good. If he was a cleaner quarterback, which meant a little bit a better decision maker, more accurate, limit the turnovers, he, in my opinion, could be in the top 2 in this list if he can improve in those areas. He's also going to need help from the offensive line. That's one of my big concerns I had about putting him on this list, but I can't project that. That's not a him problem. So I think Garrett Nussmeier, and then you also got to look at the production, Shaun. I mean, for all my issues I have with Garrett Nussmeier, the kid threw for 4,552 yards last year and accounted for 32 touchdowns. When you cannot play great football and put up that kind of production, you've got some talent. So I am projecting a tad here that he's going to clean up some of those areas now in year 2 with a new system. Because remember, he was learning a new system last year as well, to a degree. So I have him number 5 on my list, Shaun. Number 4 guy on my list is Blake Horvath from Navy. Now, this is a guy that I know people are going to hate, but this kid can flat out ball, people. This kid can flat out ball. You look at what he did in the bowl game against Oklahoma. I mean, I watched Jalen Milroe struggle to do that against Oklahoma. They were missing guys. It's Navy. Guys, it's Navy. Oklahoma, with half their team not playing in that game, still had way more talent than Navy had. And this is a kid, Shaun, that I like because he can throw the football. He can obviously run the football. He's a dynamic player. And look, everybody last year talked about the kid from Army. And for good reason. I watched Blake Horvath outduel him in a big way in that game against Army. I watched this kid step up in some big moments, and he's the only reason the Notre Dame game was not a shutout. Like, if it wasn't for Blake Horvath, that's a 51-0 game, maybe even worse. And he went out and ripped off 2 long runs against Notre Dame, a team that doesn't give up a lot of big plays. Then he goes out against Army, who had a top 5 rush defense, and he rushes for 196 yards in that game. He ran for 211 yards in a win over a ranked Memphis team where they scored 56 points. And then, of course, he goes out and runs for 155 yards against Oklahoma as well. But he's also a kid that can throw the ball, Shaun. And so I'm a big fan of Blake Horvath as far as name me more than 3 quarterbacks that run their offense in as impressive fashion as he runs his offense. That's kind of the way I look at it when I have Blake Horvath on here. And they're going to have some dudes. They're going to have some dudes that are coming back on that team too. They got a lot coming back on that offense. I think Blake Horvath's going to be a really, really good quarterback this year. Among the returners, I love him a lot, Shaun. I do. My number 3 guy on the list is Josh Hoover from TCU. I think some of y'all are going, who? But I'm telling y'all, go watch some games this kid played. Go watch some of his huddle film. This is a you want to know the epitome of what I view as a system quarterback? Now, and I mean that in a good way, a guy that just executes a system and his skill set fits the system perfectly. Love Josh Hoover, Shaun. The other thing I like about him too is there's some projection here for me, but this is still a kid that last year, Shaun, passed for 3,949 yards and accounted for 31 touchdowns last season, and had some really good games against some good teams on the schedule. Was great in a 1-point win over Texas Tech. He was very good in some of their other big games last season. I think he brings a steady presence. He started at the end of the 23 season was when he first took over. He had 2 400-yard games in that stretch. This kid is a good football player, great for that system. You know, he's not going to be on a lot of top 5 NFL draft boards, but this kid is really good. He's going into really his second full year as a starter, but third year overall. I think the system around him is going to be good. They've got some players coming back. I really like Josh Hoover, again, as a college quarterback. Some of y'all get too wrapped up into NFL tools and intangibles, and I'm saying, give me the guy that produces over the guy that looks good when he does make a throw, and I'm going to be there. And here's a hot take to give a little bit away of who my next 5 is going to be. My next 5, this is my number 1 Big 12 quarterback. Just to give you a heads up. And then we'll have something to say about the Big 12 coming up here in a minute. So my number 2, Drew Aller from Penn State, is my number 2. I think this says 2 things, Shaun. Number 1, this list speaks to that there's not a lot of great returning quarterbacks in college football, like big time, no doubt about it, guys. But number 2, I think it also speaks to the fact that Drew Aller's been a very steady football player the last couple of years. Very steady player. He's not a dynamic, wow, Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels, elite top, Pat Mahomes when he was in college. He's not that. Drew Aller just gets the job done. And he did it with a very mediocre receiving core last year. Yes, they had a great tight end, but that was it. And like you said, Shaun, I love what he did in some of the moments they needed him to play well. My thing with a lot of these guys, with Nussmeier, with Hoover's got to limit some of the bad interceptions. Aller didn't throw a lot of picks last year, but he had some bad ones, and he's got to limit some of the bad turnovers. And I think that he's going to have a better receiving core around him this year. The offensive line is going to be pretty good. And somebody in the chat just said he does not have the clutch gene. I disagree, and I think that's where I think we have the biggest disagreement with when it comes to Drew Aller is, no, he didn't have the clutch gene against Notre Dame. No, he didn't have but I mean, he actually led them down the field to get into, like against Ohio State. Do we forget that it was Drew Aller that led them down the field to get to the 1-yard line, and then it was the O-line and the running backs that got dominated from getting them there? He got them there, and then they couldn't put in the ball in the end zone. I don't necessarily put that on him, and I thought the way that he played to bring them back against Oregon impressed me. It did. And the other thing I liked about him is he made some big-time throws after Notre Dame took the lead against them to get them back in that game. So he made a bad play at the end of that game, but the Notre Dame defense overwhelmed Penn State in the second half of that game. He also, let's not forget, on their touchdown drive, threw a ball to a running back that flat out got dropped that should have allowed them to go up 14-0, but the guy dropped the pass. So Drew Aller is not an elite quarterback, but amongst the returners, he's the most steady. He's the guy that I can count on the most. And you say, gave away a game to Michigan last year. Bro, he was a sophomore as a first-year starter. Are we still going to hold stuff against him and just pretend like what a guy does in year 1? This is the crap that made people have such bad takes about Bo Nix, because they were still holding on to what he did at Auburn, and they ignored what he was doing in Oregon because they couldn't get over emotionally what he did at Auburn. Right? And I think that's where a lot of those bad takes about him came from. Guys develop. They get better. And he's getting better. Now he's got to become a guy, Shaun, that I think there's that going into year 2 of the Andy Kotelnicki era is going to help him. It's going to help him a bunch, in my opinion. So my number 1 guy coming back, Shaun, is Cade Klubnik. And again, I think what this says is this is a guy that is produced. This is a guy that has experience. But here's the other thing about him too, Shaun. No quarterback last year, in my opinion, changed his perception more from game one to get to the final game of the season than Cade Klubnik. Because after the Georgia game, I was like, he's done. He'll never be what we hoped he was going to be. Like, if they had another quarterback, he might be in trouble. By the end of the year, I'm like, this kid's really flipping good. And his production shocked me. When you look at his production at the end of the year, 3,600 passing yards, 400 rushing yards, 43 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. The production is there. He put his team on his shoulders last year at different times. The Pitt game, you talked about the game winner against Pitt. His team wasn't always great, but he's a guy that I look at and say, dependable, produces, wins a lot of football games. That's where I'm at. So that's my 5. I want to talk about this next list, Shaun, which is who are some guys that aren't on your list that you think by the end of the year you're going to say, yeah, I should have put him on my list, and why is he not on there now? And then also the breakout. And I'll start and just give you an example of what I'm talking about. There's a couple guys that I had a hard time putting on my list because I just don't think they're there yet. I think they're guys that have a lot of highlight reels. I think they're guys that have some moments, but they're guys that, to me, lack a little bit of that consistency and the production. So a lot of people in the chat, why isn't Lenore Sellers on this list? Oh, yeah, I'll tell you why.
Can I answer that?
Of course.
Because Luke Altmaier's had better numbers, and beat him in the bowl game. So if you're going to put Lenore Sellers on there, then put Luke Altmaier.
But see, that's my thing. I think
that was easy for me.
I think people saw Lenore Sellers play in a game or two where he played well. They saw him play early against LSU, and he played well. He played great against Missouri. Had some really good throws against Texas A&M. There's some other times he looked very mediocre, looked very average. And for him, it's about consistency for Lenore Sellers. Now, the reason that I have him on my list as a guy that I'm like, I may look back and regret this, but I'm comfortable with it now, is because he does have the tools to take that next level jump. But I can't put, because you can say, well, he outdueled Cade Klubnik, sort of, but then, okay, but Garrett Nussmeier outdueled him. And, there's all these different things you can look at. I think Lenore Sellers is a talented quarterback, but he still has more to prove to me before I can say he's top 5 right now. And also the production's not elite either, Shaun. He ran for 674 yards last year. He only passed for 2,500 yards last year, and he had 25 touchdowns. And you know what I mean? Like I don't think the production is there. The talent is good. The highlight reels are good. When he's on his game, he's really good. But there's a lot more of this for him. And that's kind of what kept Nico off my list too, Shaun, is there's a lot of mediocre football on his schedule last year and some really impressive football. Luke Altmaier, to me, is the guy that I considered, Shaun, but it's just the level of play is just not – the talent's not there. I don't know that the offense is there for him to put up the production to be there. But I'll tell you the other thing too, Shaun, that I had a tough time with. Dylan Raiola is another one, because you made a point about what they got coming back. They had a great portal class as well at receiver. They got the Kentucky kid, Dane Key. They got Naziah Hunter from Cal. They got Rocco Spindler at guard. Like, he could be one that I'm looking back and saying he should be on here. But I don't have a lot of sophomores on here. I don't have DJ Lagway on here, for example, because they've got a lot to prove to me. But they're guys that by the end of the year could have a shot to be on there that I look at and say, you know what, like, man, I think I may look back on that. And then my Kevin Jennings is one that I felt comfortable leaving off, because I felt like as the season wore on and people got a read on him, he wasn't as effective. And I find it strange that they went out and went to the portal to find people to compete with him, which I thought was interesting. I thought about putting Haynes King on there, but he's got to prove to me he can play a full season. That's my thing on Haynes King. He's got to prove to me he can play. Because if he'd have been healthy all year, his numbers would have been like, dude, how do you not have Haynes King on there? He's got to prove to me. Avery Johnson's another guy. Rocco Beck people talk about. But I'm comfortable with the list that I have, with the exception of those guys. That's my list of guys. And then my breakout, Shaun, as I kick it to you, the guy that's not on my list has no argument to be on my list right now, but has a shot to become a guy that has a potential by the end of the year, is a no-brainer top 5 pick, is DJ Lagway. Anyone putting DJ Lagway on their list right now is 100% projecting something onto him. And I project some with guys, but it's not a full-throated, he was this last year, he can't be this year. That's why I don't have Nico on there, for example. DJ Lagway last year passed for 1,900 yards, only rushed for 100 yards. He barely had 2,000 yards of offense and only accounted for 12 touchdowns and threw 9 picks. Is he an elite talent? Absolutely. Could he end up being an elite player this year? Absolutely. But there has to be some level of, he's got a lot to prove before he gets there. That is why he's not on my list. I would have put Dylan Raiola on there before I'd have put DJ Lagway on there in a preseason top 5 list. But I also, Shaun, won't be shocked if at the end of the year we're ranking quarterbacks at the end of the year and DJ Lagway's on there, because there's no debating his toughness. There's no debating his talent. And I think as he started to pick the system up more and more and more, you saw a kid that's got the chance to be a star. But from where he is now to where he is to be a star, long way to go. If he had not started last year, he might be number 1 on my list, at worst number 2 of my new first-year starters. He's got that kind of ability. But it's a long way to go to get there. That's why DJ wasn't on there. But he's my breakout pick of guy not on this list who could be a breakout and get there. So that's where I'm at with DJ. What is your list, Shaun? First, the guys that you kind of, didn't have on your list who you think, you had a tough time with, and then who's your breakout player?
I'm gonna be honest. I really thought about putting Diego Pavia on this list, right around 4 or 5.
The Vanderbilt quarterback.
Yeah, I really did. Really impressed with that young man being at the forefront of the resurgence of Vanderbilt and how that offense was able to go up against top teams. I think later in the season, when I watched them against some really good defenses, things didn't go the same. And I was like, okay, there it is. He's still missing some pieces outside of him to help him in moments like that. But I think coming back, being in his second year there, I think he can definitely improve. I really liked what I saw. He almost creeped in and knocked both of the youngsters out at 5. He almost got rid of both of the youngsters. And the love and respect I gained for them at the end of the season, and went with him at 5. Another one, I thought about Carson Beck. I did.
He's not eligible for this list, though. He's on the next one.
Because he's on the next one. But
let me say one thing about Pavia real quick, is to tell people why he's not on my list.
Yeah.
If you look at his last 6 games, his highest passing yards total was 186. His highest yards per attempt total was 7.8. He had 2 games where he completed less than 50% of his passes, and in his last 7 games, his highest completion percent was 61.9, and that was in a bowl game where he only passed for 160 yards. And then in that stretch too, it's not like he had a 100-yard rushing game. So when I just look at the overall production, Shaun, that was my issue. Only 28 touchdowns, just over 3,000 total yards of offense. He's gritty. He's a winner. He's all that kind of stuff. But as far as like a top quarterback, he's always going to win at a higher level than what he's going to produce and really be talent-wise. He's sort of that guy as opposed to a top individual quarterback. That was kind of my issue with Diego Pavia's. I think people what we fall victim to as fans is I saw this guy play that one game against Bama, and so he's big time. And I'm like, yeah, but did you watch him the rest of the year? Because he never repeated that Bama performance the rest of the year. 252 passing yards, 80% completions, 12.6 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns, also ran for 56 yards, but he never came close to doing that again, except against Ball State. 4.9 yards per attempt against Texas, 6.5 against Auburn, 5.4 against South Carolina, 6.1 against Tennessee. Like that's where to me he can't be on my list. Why I didn't really have an issue like leaving him off. I think we both had a much tougher time, or I had a much tougher time with Lenore Sellers than I did Diego Pavia.
Yeah, and then the person for me, for different reasons, it's not apples to apples, but I think the impact that Blake Horvath has for Navy was the same impact that Jake Retzlaff had for BYU. Like I just think that kid, what he meant to BYU and the confidence he gave them on offense, coming back another year, I think BYU bears watching in the Big 12 and how that offense could improve in year 2 with Jake Retzlaff. That was a guy I thought about. Didn't think about Sellers, like I said, for me. And once again, my list was not about, saw somebody say, I'll take Sellers over Altmaier any day. That wasn't what my list was about. Altmaier had better stats, better numbers, with less talent, and beat him head up. Like, I don't care who the offensive coordinator was. He beat him head up in the bowl game. And Altmaier faced a more difficult defense than Sellers did in that matchup, by the way. So if I'm not going to consider a guy that's at my alma mater, then I'm definitely not going to consider
You're not going to get a guy that beat him.
No.
Shaun, who is your breakout? No. Who's your breakout guy?
I'm going to be
honest,
a guy that
just should not be on this list, but could end up still being a star when it's all said and done. Like, did my DJ Lagway thing make sense? Like, there's no way you can argue a kid who barely has 2,000 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 9 picks is on a top 5 list, but you also can't deny that this is one of the 5 most talented quarterbacks in the country.
Yes, I would agree with that assessment of DJ Lagway. And of course, he has to be healthy.
Yeah.
He has to be healthy. Now,
right.
It's one of his shoulders that they're trying to, nurse him along. He just came off the leg injury. So it's like, hey, can we trust that he's going to be healthy for the majority of the season or throughout the season next year to be able to make that ascension? We don't know, Bryan. We just don't know.
Who is your breakout?
Oh, it was DJ for me.
Oh, it's DJ. Okay, so we're on the same page there.
Yeah.
Here's a guy, and Andrew Gilmore and I are about the my number 2 potential breakout, and you know where I'm going to go with this one, Shaun. It's Aiden Childs.
Mm-hmm. We both love him.
Super talented. Doesn't belong to be on this list because he has a long way to go. But it wouldn't shock me if year 2 under Jonathan Smith, that kid has a breakout season. He's incredibly talented. I think Haynes King is the guy that I think I'm going to, even more so than Lenore Sellers. Like, for everybody talking about Lenore Sellers, why aren't you talking about Haynes King? Haynes King was a far more productive quarterback than Lenore Sellers was last year. Far more productive. And has a lot more experience as a quarterback as well. So that's where I'm at with that one, Shaun. So that's my list of the 5 starters. We're going to get to the top 5 transfers next, and then the top 5 first-year starters. What's up?
Watch that kid from Washington, too.
Damon Williams. Yeah. I count him as a first-year guy because I know he played some last year, but he was more of an injury fill-in guy.
Yeah, he can be a breakout,
Yes.
But you're right. He could be that first-time guy.
Yeah.
On the next list,
And I talked about him a little bit last week, Shaun. He's a very interesting player because he's a different type of cat. He's not going to put up numbers necessarily that are going to blow people away, but he's a very interesting player. So we're going to get to our transfer quarterbacks next, folks. But before we do, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast with your friends and family. If you're listening via podcast platform, please give us a 5-star review. We would greatly appreciate that. And, of course, if you are not on the message board at boards.oursbreakdown.com, you are absolutely missing out. That is where you guys can go and we can continue this quarterback conversation. But that is our 5 returning starting quarterbacks in college football, our top 5 lists.